Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. I rise, as every loyal South Australian member of this place should be doing, standing up for the future of the Murray-Darling Basin, standing up for South Australia. There are a few things that should come as no surprise to anyone participating in or viewing the unfolding debate on this bill, on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. One of those being the vigour of South Australian members to come to the defence of our state, our River Murray. It should only be deemed as a natural response for us to stand up for a river that is not just a lifeblood to our townships that run along it, across the regions, but as a source of water for our state as a whole. Australia is the driest inhabited continent on the earth, drier even than my not-so-subtle attempts to force some humour into a subject that is deadly serious. With so much riding on this plan being reinvigorated under our government, after it being collecting cobwebs, at best, under the previous Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison governments. It is only natural that in the context of our climate we factor in what comes naturally, but we also prepare a strategy to mitigate the impacts of climate change too. I do regret deeply that I was not in the chamber the first sitting evening when debate on this bill resumed, but by all accounts I missed out on quite a show by three wise men. However, it is equally as fitting, given the National Party's line and length on this debate. They are effectively being Ebenezer Scrooge toward water flowing into South Australia, that we would have the ghosts of Nationals past, present and future in no particular order. I'll leave that up to you to decide who's who. We had the member for Maranoa, the leader of the Nationals, the member for Riverina, a former leader of the Nationals, a notable friend of the filibuster and quite arguably a leading Mike Pence cosplay enthusiast. After we heard from the two co-chairs, a group one couldn't definitely not describe as the parliamentary friends of the member for New England, to put it mildly, but then we heard from the member for Nichols. But the member for Nichols is someone I feel is a member with big shoes to fill in this area of public policy space. We can't be overly unfair so as to both tar and feather the member for Nichols with the remarks and the actions of his forebears, but they are far too outlandish, far too obscene to admit their mention to this debate. Though this occurred before my time as a member of this place, at the time it was happening, it certainly got quite the play in the media, where the former member for Nichols, Damien Drum, joined in on what only could be described as being basically a gunpowder plot, commenced in the other place by his National Senate colleagues, against their own coalition partners to drive a stake through the heart of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. The former member even went so far as to distribute talking points stating that the science no longer supports South Australia needing fresh water. Frankly, the science is such a weird and very ironic nickname for the National Party for so many reasons I don't quite have time to unpack. But equally, he could have been using the word euphemistically for out of thin air. The talking points further stating that rising sea levels will mean the SA Lakes lower lake system will not need environmental water. Ancient history. No, try 2021. From what I have gathered from watching the footage from the chamber that night, it makes me lament reading page 163 of House Practice. It states that refreshments other than water are not to be consumed in the chamber because, if the subject matter weren't so gravely vital to South Australia, this would have been perfect. You get both dinner and a show. Though I am glad House Practice notes that we do not deprive members of water, I just wish the Nationals in this chamber would do the same courtesy for South Australia. I take particular note of the sterling performance put on by the member for Riverina, a state of affairs we have almost come to expect from the member. He even brought an antique book into the chamber to act as a prop. The contents of the book notwithstanding, it's that glint in his eye as he brandishes it. It reminded me of the many children at Playford College I recently visited for Book Week. With that part aside, along with much bluster, I would like to take particular note of a number of his remarks in the chamber on this debate. The member for Riverina dived in head first to the debate, something one should avoid doing along many parts of the Murray-Darling due to a lack of visibility and perhaps the salinity too. Those opposite are salty enough as it is. The member for Riverina accused government members who participated in the debate at the time of coming in with talking points from the proverbial Labor dirt unit, accusing us of not having a stake in the game, though I find the use of the word game to be rather unfortunate. More substantively, he said this all the while the Minister for Social Services and the member for Adelaide were to make contributions to the debate that evening. I was shocked that the member for Riverina would be at all surprised to hear that, at least on our side of the chamber, those of us hailing from South Australia are singing from a hymn sheet, and we don't require some mystical Labor dirt unit to achieve this. Is it that the Nationals are just confused because their only special interest we are bringing in this debate as South Australians involve ensuring that our state continues to have clean drinking water from the Murray River for years to come? For that matter, I am pleased to be speaking in favour of this bill, so that Hansard can reflect that I join not just the Minister for Social Services and the member for Adelaide in doing so, but also the member for Boothby and the member for Macon, who stood up for South Australia and the River Murray in this place too. Perhaps we should be updating our registers of interest to reflect the fact that we require water to drink on a regular basis, as without it we die. I would certainly hate to think someone would consider it a conflict of interest on our part for wanting to continue doing this in South Australia for many long years to come. And speaking of the South Australian hymn sheet, I started preparing my remarks, hoping for something a bit better from the member for Ramsay and the member for Barker, but at least we can hold on to some quotes from the member for Sturt and Senator McLaughlin, two South Australian Liberals. The member for Sturt told the Australian that South Australia should get the extra 450 gigalitres of environmental water delivered to it, even if it is by way of voluntary water purchases. Though he somewhat equivocates on that when speaking on the bill, he strays from the path. Senator McLaughlin, on the other hand, said it was an imperative that we prioritise the welfare of our natural world and the way we do so is through securing that water. When the senator has his chance to speak on this bill at some point in the future, we can only hope that this view remains constant. Although, now that we are passing quotes, I'm hoping someone is good with their trivia and can tell me who this is. By the sound of it, the author of the quote I'm about to discuss, it must have come from a truly radical free thinker, a true environmentalist and progressive. Must have said these words on the Basin Plan. I'll share the quote, and I'm sure once I say it, the identity of its source will be utterly obvious. Here goes. The old way of managing the basin has reached its use-by date. We need to confront head-on, and in a comprehensive way, the over-allocation of water in the Murray-Darling. The name might not come to mind straight away just from that, but I'm sure those opposite are narrowing down whether this person is a Green Left, a Marxist, a South Australian, or all of the above. It was, in fact, John Winston Howard, former Prime Minister, who, as my South Australian colleague, the member for Ramsay, pointed out earlier in his contribution, it started this journey by way of his government introducing this water bill in 2007, coupled with billions in funding, something relatively easier to do with banked-up political capital. An economy still enjoying the enormous sugar hit of the mining boom and the scruples of a fiscal conservative with an election fast approaching. Though the Howard government did not survive long after that, nor did John Howard's political career, I'm still happy to take note of significant developments like this by those belonging to the parties occupying the other side of the chamber, past or present. For many reasons, nobody can be surprised by the tone and content of the debate thus far from those opposite. But I'd contend that it has a bit to do with the exact point made by the member for Riverina. It's about what stake they have in the game. It is a commonly known fact that the National Party, at present day, is effectively a non-entity in South Australia. The last elected member of Parliament, federal or state, to hail from the National Party in South Australia was Carleen Maywald, who was the state member for Chaffey from 1997 until 2010, a seat located in South Australia's Riverland region. However, for roughly half of her parliamentary career, she served as a minister in Mike Rann's state Labor government, the Minister for the River Murray and the Minister for Water Security, no less. For that matter, she was the last member of the National Party to hold portfolios in that policy space that did not make everyday South Australians anxious to hear that they are a National Party member too. Even their coalition partners, when in government, have tried to avoid giving the Nationals the pick of the litter in those ministerial portfolios. Even from within their joint party room, the Liberals make efforts to keep portfolios like the environment, water, away from the Nats' exclusive fiefdom. Though, when this doesn't occur, it makes me wonder how the sausage gets made with that coalition agreement of theirs and the cause for the weakness and capitulation by the Liberals. And we are close to it under the Leader of the Opposition. Let's examine their shadow ministry list for a moment. Agriculture, to the Nats. Environment, also to the Nats. And water, you best be sure that has also gone to the National Party. Climate change and energy, no, the Libs kept it. They were close to the Quinella, but not close enough.
Point of order, member for Spence. Give the call to the opposition spokesman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Point of order on relevance. This is in relation to the Water Amendment Restoring Our Rivers Bill, not the history of the National Party in other states.
I thank the honourable member. Member Spence, I reckon you are being relevant. You put a lot of effort into this. It's an evocative speech. I'm interested to hear the end of it.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. Speaking of agriculture, the Shadow Minister of Agriculture in any case, he spoke just before the member for Riverina in this debate, and it was quite a scrappy and erratic display. It was almost as if he was auditioning for a voice act role of the member for New England on some new take of the 1980s show Rubbery Figures. But we all know the member for New England would like to play a part the member for Maranoa currently holds. Time will tell. But the member for Maranoa on this bill yelled into the void, wondering where the Minister for the Environment was to answer all of his rhetorical questions, of which there were many. However, since the introduction of this bill to the House last sitting, the Minister has been in this place every single question time, every single one. And now, for a rhetorical question of my own. Did the member for Maranoa ask any of these questions directly to the Minister for Environment and Water? Absolutely not. It was completely superfluous of me to fill you in on that tidbit of knowledge. However, did anyone ask questions of the Minister about the bill and the Murray-Darling Basin Plan? Absolutely, on 3 separate occasions during question time. Neither of those questions were asked by the member for Maranoa, of course. 2 questions were asked by the Minister by the member for Boothby, and a 3rd question was asked by the member for Macon during the previous sitting week. Nothing since. But who's surprised? Would it be a shock to anyone to know that the member for Maranoa's first instinct, when he doesn't know the answer